Hi! So a couple weeks ago I posted a video after I spoke at a forum and I was just really uncomfortable with kind of how it went, and so I decided to make this video about my eating disorder so that way everyone could really have the whole story about it. But I realized that it's kind of long, and for someone who's asking me about my story, I don't want to send them to that video because it is kind of long, and so I wanted to make like a little bit more of a condensed version for you guys, and then if you want to know more you can go watch that, but this is like a little bit shorter and I'm going to try not to ramble, but forgive me if I do. So getting to it, I have always had an issue with quote-unquote fat, and I didn't really realize that until recently actually, but I remember as like a kindergartner my mom got a babysitter to come over, and she told me she didn't really know her all that well, she just knew who she was, and I was terrified that this babysitter was going to be fat and that I was going to have to sit and play with this fat girl for hours. Like, what 5-year-old thinks of that? I don't know, but that was like the first memory I have of really not being okay with fat or fat people. And then fast forward to 4th grade, I got put in a class with an overweight teacher, and I was disgusted. I did not want to be in that class. I wanted to be moved, and I was very vocal about that, but my mom didn't let me, and I'm glad she didn't because I had a great year. My teacher is a great person. So fast forwarding again to the next year, 5th grade, which is where we split our middle school and our elementary school, so I changed schools. And that was really the first time that I actually felt uncomfortable with myself rather than just other people who I thought were fat and or overweight or something like that. So I was 11, and I was the tallest person, give or take maybe a couple people, in my class, and I absolutely hated it. All my friends were still able to shop at like the fun, cute stores where 11-year-olds shop, and I couldn't because I was so tall. I was like 5'4", probably-ish, when I was 11. And so I thought I was too big, and I wanted to be smaller. Obviously, I knew I couldn't shrink my height, so I decided I would get skinnier, and that would be how I got smaller to be more like my friends. So I diet here and there, nothing too serious or crazy, but I didn't really lose a lot of weight doing that. I just kind of became more and more uncomfortable with myself doing that. And it really also didn't help that, I was already 5'4" at 11 years old, and every single other woman in my family is like 5'2" or under and petite, and I was not. But yeah, this poor body image just continued to grow and grow until about 6th grade, so about a year and a half, I'd say. I was still tall. I had grown another probably 4 inches. I was about 5'8" at that time. And I totally remember that day when I crossed the line from being unhappy but still healthy to being unhappy and unhealthy. And I know in my last video, or if you've heard me share my story before, I said it was in 7th grade, but I was really thinking about it, and it was definitely 6th grade, so a little bit younger. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, 12. And I've been out of school for a week with the flu. It was horrible, horrible, throwing up all the time, couldn't keep anything down. And I got back to school, and one of my friends came up and was so excited to see me because I had been gone for so long. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you're finally back. I hope you feel better." And she just kind of stopped and looked at me and said, "You look really skinny." And it just kind of went in my mind, like, everything made sense. And I hadn't been eating, and I was puking, and now somebody thought I was skinny, and it was like the biggest epiphany that I had ever had. And so right from there, it started. I told my friend, like, yeah, I feel better, da da da, and we went to lunch. And I told her that my stomach still wasn't totally great, and so I didn't eat lunch that day. And I just continued to eat less and less at lunch, and it's hard to roll over into home. And I would make excuses about why I didn't like my food, or that I didn't feel good, or that it was just gross, school lunches are nasty type of thing. But that was really when I found Anna. And I refer to anorexia as Anna, and I refer to it as a she, just because that's kind of how it was in my mind and on the online communities and stuff like that. And the best way that I have ever heard it described is that Anna is like a lioness that is in your mind, and she's there, and she's manipulating you, and she's making you think that this is what you need to do to be happy and to be skinny. And those were synonyms, basically. And so she's just kind of like this thing, or this best friend that your parents think is a horrible influence on you and like forbid you to go hang out with, but she's in your head and no one knows she's there, so it's not really like you can't hang out with her because she's in your brain. And so from then on, I didn't eat food. And food was not food to me. Like, I ate numbers. I ate calories, I ate grams of fat, I ate grams of carbs, protein. Those were all just numbers. Like, food wasn't food to me anymore. It was straight up numbers. And so I convinced my mom to move the treadmill into our like garage rec room, and I would wake up before school and run. I'd run after school and after basketball practice, and I would just run and run and run, and the only thing that kept fueling me was the fact that I wanted to burn those calories, those numbers. The number of calories that I burned had to be exponentially higher than that of what I took in. So I quickly found the Pro Anna communities online, and we were constantly in contact. I was always in search of like Anna buddies, and we were always on forums where we would share tips and tricks and post Thinspiration or Thinspo. And it was just like this whole world of people who understood me and weren't judging me. And a quick side note, I know I said I was going to try and stay on track, but the term Pro Anna is a shortened term for pro anorexia. And I know to different people it means different things, but I just want to clarify that I was never actually diagnosed, and so this was something that I refer to myself as, and it wasn't that I wanted to be anorexic. I just didn't have the diagnosis, but it was a term that I found people who described themselves as that, who were already struggling with the same things I was and weren't ready to recover yet, or were struggling to get into recovery or hadn't been diagnosed like myself. Not one person ever that I came across was encouraging somebody to be ill, or wished somebody to be ill, or to start going down the path that they were. It was just for people who already were in the same boat, and we were a support system for each other. Okay, so getting back on track, it really didn't take me long to figure out that there was a massive difference between being hungry and between being empty. And once I discovered that like total empowering and euphoric feeling of being empty, that was my goal, to feel like that all the time. And looking back, it like does not make sense, because when you are empty, you're going in and out. I'd get black spots, white spots, I'd be dizzy all the time, I was exhausted, I was freezing, but it meant I had good control, and it was how I wanted to feel all the time. And I thought it took like 3 days for me to really feel empty of total fasting. Like nothing but water, maybe some green tea, just fasting. And so that was my goal, to only eat every 3 days. And if I did eat anything under 200 calories a day, it was okay. Anything over that was absolutely unacceptable, and anything over 500 calories was considered a binge, and I was just so disappointed in myself all the time if I ever went over that. If I couldn't run after school, which I was running at this point like 18 to 20 miles a day, mind you, so it was a lot. If I couldn't run, or I couldn't get as many miles in as I wanted, I would stay up all night long and pace back and forth in my room, like power walking or doing crunches or exercising, just trying to burn those extra calories. Needless to say, my performance in school and basketball and any other sports sucked because I was so weak. I got hurt all the time. I was tired. I couldn't focus on anything because literally 100% of my brain power was constantly focused on how many calories I was eating, how I was going to get out of eating next, and what I was going to do to burn them if I couldn't get out of it. So my mom caught on a little bit quicker than most of my friends, and she started making sure that I would eat breakfast and dinner because she wasn't at school with me, obviously, for lunch. And that's kind of when I knew I'd have to get serious about this. Like, if I was going to do this, I was going to have to be good at hiding it. And I was. There were times that she would like call me in from running or working out for dinner, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll be in a minute, and then just keep going, completely skip dinner, and just make up an excuse like, oh, I'm sorry, I got lost track, I wanted to reach this goal. And I started also lying about food, about what I liked, about what I didn't like. I'd lie about how much I ate and what I ate, or if I ate. I would hide it. I would leave empty wrappers around. I'd put dishes in the sink that were just like as decoys for my mom or someone to think that I ate. And I would even like chew and spit. And it's just absolutely amazing to me the lengths that I went to get out of eating calories. And I knew that I couldn't hide it from everybody all the time, but I also knew that I couldn't eat because that wasn't an option. And so that's kind of when I started purging as well. And at first it was just like, I'll just purge after a big meal or if I have to eat in front of somebody, but then it became like just as much as an obsession as restricting did. And I purged every time I ate. At home, at restaurants, at friends' house, even at school. If I put something in my body, it was coming out. And I was still trying to only do that every 3 days. So now we are in 8th grade. That was the absolute worst part of my eating disorder. And I remember my teacher brought in donuts for Fat Tuesday, which is an anorexic's nightmare, other than Thanksgiving, but that's just like a whole nother story. My friend came up to me and told me that I should have a donut because I looked like I was losing weight, and it was because I wasn't eating. And I just kind of brushed it off. I was like, no, I just don't like frosting, and I walked away. But I was so like elated and ecstatic that she noticed that I was getting skinny. That meant that I was reaching my goals, I was doing something right, and it kind of just fueled the fire. And so calories kind of became like the scariest thing in the entire world. I would literally break down crying and like have panic attacks when I thought about them or that I might have to eat. And so restriction became more of like a necessity rather than just like a thing I wanted to do to get skinny, even though that was like my goal. But food and calories were just terrifying, and it became more than just food. Like, I was terrified of toothpaste, and I always use this as an example. Like, I still brushed my teeth, but I thought that there was calories in toothpaste that they weren't telling us about that was going to absorb while I was brushing my teeth, or that I would take super short showers because I was afraid of the sodium and minerals and stuff like that in the water. I thought they would absorb into my skin and make me bloat. Totally not logical, but something that was very real to me. So yeah, like I said, okay. My mom also had these old diet pills in the back of her cupboard that she wasn't using because they had gotten banned because they were found to cause heart failure. So she wasn't using them, and so I started stealing them, and I was using those, and that would be considered a meal. Like a diet pill or two would be considered a meal for me. And so yeah, like I said, 8th grade was definitely the lowest point of my eating disorder. I was 14, and I was restricting immensely. I was purging, and I was stealing diet pills, and I was using laxatives, and I was over-exercising. And at this point, I knew it could kill me, but I didn't really care. I was never suicidal in any way, shape, or form, but I would have rather died than gotten fat. That was my absolute worst fear. And the weird thing about this is, looking back, I really remember, even though this was such a hard time for my eating disorder, I loved 8th grade, and I had a lot of great friends, and I had a lot of fun that year, which just kind of doesn't make sense to me still, but it's just weird how that is. So my mom never really knew my exact weight because, like I said, I never was actually diagnosed. But at that point, I had lost probably about 35 pounds. And so she noticed that I wasn't eating and that I had been losing weight, and she threatened to take me to the doctor. And the doctor was like a death sentence in my mind. I thought they were going to put me on a feeding tube because that was what had happened to my Anna buddy at the time. And around that same time, my Anna buddy, who had been put on the feeding tube a while back, her mother messaged me off of her daughter's phone and told me that her daughter had a heart attack and that she probably wasn't going to make it, and she didn't. And she was only 16 years old. She was 2 years older than me, but she was like the same height as me, and she was only like 5 or 10 pounds less than me, and she died from doing the exact same things that I was doing. And I know I said that I wasn't afraid to die or that it was gonna kill me, but something about actually losing somebody who I had spoken with and encouraged with for almost the last year, dying from doing the exact same things that I was doing, just kind of changed something in me, and I realized that I didn't really want to die, and so I agreed to gain a little bit of weight with my mom over that summer. And one of the reasons that I agreed to do it also was because if I was going to gain weight, I wanted to be in 100% control of it. So summer going into my freshman year, I had gained about 20 pounds that summer, and I was terrified to go back to school because I thought that everyone was going to be like, wow, she got fat, and that everyone was going to notice that I gained weight. Even though I entered high school with like a BMI of like 18.5. But ever since then, I have been at a healthy weight, but all throughout high school, my weight did fluctuate, but I was never actually 100% healthy. There was never a long period of time where I wasn't practicing some sort of disordered eating habits, whether it be restricting, purging, over exercising, all of the above, and so forth. But I decided that I didn't want to take Anna and Mia to college with me. And so I was all ready to go. I was super excited for college. But then my roommates and I didn't really click. And that was really hard, and I started to relapse really quickly. And I went back to lying about meals, I went back to restricting, I went back to purging, and I was working out about 3 to 5 hours a day. And a lot of that was just to kind of avoid being in that awkward situation in my room because we didn't really get along. And so I lost about 15 pounds from the time I moved in to my college dorm in late August and to about mid-October when I moved out. So realizing that I wanted to be healthy and that it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought really scared me. This was something that had been a huge part of my life for like the last 8 years. I felt like I was losing a huge part of myself, and I didn't know who I was without this or what I liked, like my interests or anything like that. I had no idea. However, I managed to do it, and in the process of healing my mind, I did gain some weight, not in a lot amount, not a lot, not a lot, but more than I was comfortable with. So yeah, still didn't have the best body image, but I can genuinely say that from the second semester of my freshman year to the beginning of my 5th year of college, I was recovered. I didn't restrict, I didn't purge, I was active and healthy, and for the most part, I was really happy. I really didn't fear relapse at all. I thought this was totally something that was in my past. Eating disorders was something I was done with. I dealt with it. It's not a part of my life anymore, is what I thought. But in this last year of college, I've totally learned that this is something that is always going to be a part of me, and that the Anna and Mia thoughts are going to pop up in my head when I'm stressed, and I'm just going to have to be strong enough to shut them out. Because eating disorders are totally about control, and when I start to feel like I might not have control over everything in my life or my future, like graduating college, it's really easy to slip back into those disordered habits. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, my friend said that the refrigerator light had burnt out, and that's when I realized I hadn't been in the fridge in over a week. And it was totally unconscious that I had done that I had been restricting. And I mean, there was some other things that I knew I was doing that wasn't necessarily healthy, but that part was just like mind-blowing. How did I not notice that? But I just know now that this is something that's going to be with me, and I'm just going, like I said, I'm just going to have to be strong enough and smart enough to work through it, because I have to, and I don't want to go back to where I was. A couple of ways that I have found that really help me. The first one is music. I love music. It has totally been my lifesaver. I even got a tattoo of the word lollygagging because of the song Lindsay Quit Lollygagging, which is about a person who loves this person so much that they just want them to be happy and healthy and be okay. And the idea that someone could feel about me the way that this person is singing about this other person just really helped me pull through. I also meal prep, and that really helps me. And one thing that I know they tell a lot of people like not to do, that I find really helpful, is eating in front of the TV. It helps me focus on the TV rather than the numbers that are going in my head, and I'm not trying to calculate all the calories or fat or anything that is in my food. And I'm also not going to get up and go purge right after if I'm focused on the show rather than what I've just eaten. So that's a really big thing for me right now, and I just want to try and keep it short, like I said. But my ending thoughts are just that you're never too big to be sick, and don't ever think that you're not sick enough to get help or that you don't deserve help, because you're worth it. And like I said, if you want to go to the full version of my story where I really go kind of in more detail about all of those 8 years of horrible habits, that video is available. But I just wanted to have this shorter version for people who don't really have time for that, but wanted to hear my story before they asked me to share it, or vice versa, because I don't share my story for me. It's actually kind of hard for me to do it, but I share it because people have come to me and told me that because they heard my story that they chose to tell somebody or they chose to get help. And to me, that is totally worth it, because I don't want anyone else to ever have to feel like this. And if you do, please reach out, because you don't have to. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and